the 23rd Sunday after Pentecost, the reading from Luke's Gospel, chapter 21, verses 5 through 19. When some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, he said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." They asked him, "Teacher, when will this be? And what will be the sign that this is about to take place?" And he said, "Beware that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and 'the time is near.' Do not go after them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified. For these things must take place first, but the end will not follow immediately." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famine and plagues. And there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven. But before all this occurs, they will arrest you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and prisons. You will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance. For I will give you words and a wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers, by relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair on your head will perish. By your endurance, you will gain your souls." Race faith. The reading before us from Luke poses so many problems that the preacher, well on his guard against falling before his congregation, could not come to blame if he chose to avoid it altogether. The forbidding, even brutally honest assessment that Jesus makes concerning buildings made of limestone, ivory, gold, and precious gems, and his more chilling prognostications about our flesh make me shudder to use it as a text through which to inspire, excite, and bedazzle those of you who might dare to listen. But like Paul, I anxiously admit the foolishness of preaching. I throw myself upon God's mercy that this offering will not offend God, even if it offends you. So with that warning in mind, let us undertake the examination of this difficult text. Now, as Jesus draws near the great temple completed under Herod's supervision, a temple Herod intended would glorify himself as much as the God of all Israel, many marveled at the great size of its stones, the brilliant shine of its golden doors, the ostentatious bejeweling used to adorn it, and its ornately carved pinnacles. All the ancient testimony touching on the size, the volume, and meticulous care devoted to the construction of the temple, all that testimony agrees that it magnified the great purposes faithful, pious Jews hope to fulfill, to honor God and to appease God too, with penitent prayers and priestly sacrifices of meat, fruit, and bread. But Jesus, in spite of all the gawking and the stirring awe of his companions, remains unamused, unimpressed, unmoved by this temple, setting astride the Temple Mount in the holy city of Jerusalem. Jesus even goes so far as to make a prediction none of his listeners could ever wish or bear to hear. "As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." Close quote. The work of human hands cannot last always. And if that be true for works in stone and glass, it may also be true of works of power, to create empires, to form nations, and to create traditions that establish cultural customs, to shape communal identity. We have trust that such things will last. And by their very presence, we secure our orientation within the world. The certitudes of our past give us hope for the expectation that they will last. But Jesus does not polish promises made in wood and cut stone. He tells us that all of this will come to ruin, that the great and breathtaking temple will not last. And not because it will erode in time and gradually dissolve from nature's wear. No, Jesus declares the temple under construction for more than 40 years will be thrown down, demolished, destroyed, and in far less time than it took to construct it. When Jesus' listeners inquire when this might come to pass, he warns them that they will become eager for a leader, one who claims to come in the name of Jesus. But he emphasizes that this impostor and many more like him have a false testimony, an unauthorized teaching, and a ministry of treachery. Jesus admonishes his disciples and us in words of caution as direct as they are simple and clear. Do not go after them. But as dire a warning as this fails to conclude Jesus' gloomy anticipation of the signs to come. He foresees earthquakes and nations engaged in bone-splitting wars against one another. He sees internal factions spring up within a nation to rend and tear it with bloody insurrections. Whole peoples will suffer from famine and plagues will grip the land as the remnant of the living bury the stiffening bodies of the dead. Under the weight of all this dread, Jesus will expect his followers to testify to his name. Temples are impermanent, but bodies much more quickly expire. And let us speak the truth about it now. The pains that accompany skin-shriveling death terrify us beyond imagining. And yet, Jesus tells us candidly that for the sake of his name, we who have thrown in our lot with him will taste the bitter drink of betrayal, and our own families will do it. Jesus tells us that people of ill temper will drag us before the local judges, governors, and lofty high-seated religious elites, and that they will hasten to persecute, condemn, jail, and even kill us. We will not deserve it, but that will not matter to our accusers, their lips dripping with words of nullification and interposition. Nonetheless, Jesus urges his followers to remain steadfast, telling them that because of their many persecutions, they will have an opportunity to testify. He advises them to make no preparation for their own defense, for he will provide them with the words, the arguments, the wisdom. None of their opponents could withstand nor contradict. The apocalyptic vision that Jesus shares of the world falling apart reminds me of the American track team that ran in the Olympics hosted by Mexico City in 1968. Do you remember? My second year in college had just begun, and in all the previous year, in tournament after tournament, news spread throughout the United States that a very promising hopeful for the Olympics might bring home the gold if he qualified to compete. Tommy Smith possessed a fluid grace when he ran and raced around the track. His sprint dazzled those who watched, and his lean into the curve at the top of the track negotiated a truce between gravity and acceleration so that speed always won. Tommy Smith never fell down. His gazelle-like gait, his lean, long limbs, and his cruising carriage made whole stadiums hold their breath. Tommy Smith would take the Olympic gold, and everyone knew it. But his close compatriot, John Carlos, was no slacker. While he did not display the same lyricism of stride, his motor never paused nor stalled. He could bustle around a track with determined will of mind over body to make the tape break across his chest. When their event finally arrived for them to show just how fleet of foot they might boast, Tommy sailed along in a wicked pace, and John Carlos closed with undeterred resolve. Their 200-meter sprint made Americans proud, for they had managed to take both gold and bronze. But the race has receded in memory because what happened next engulfed America in recriminations, reprisals, and charges leveled at Smith and Carlos for their lack of tact, their tasteless nerve, their spiteful disrespect for their country and their flag. When the moment arrived for them to receive their medals, the moment for their country to receive tributes of honor and acclaim, they took off their shoes, raised a black gloved fist high over their bowed heads as our national anthem echoed from loudspeakers perched on wobbly stands. I remember even now how the American flag fluttered fitfully in the dry Mexican air. In quiet protest, but visible so that all the world might see, the two athletes in their moment of supreme glory used it instead to bring attention to America's miscarriage of justice for its black and brown citizens. Editorialists, columnists, news anchors, and opinion makers vilified the two young black men. Some even went so far as to claim that they had betrayed their race. They fumed that Smith and Carlos had belittled the memory of their sainted forebear, Jesse Owens, whom they declared never could have done such a thing so disrespectful as criticize his nation in a moment of triumph. Tellingly, Smith would say, in response to all his opponents, "We were not antichrists. We were just human beings who saw a need to bring attention to the inequality in our country. I don't like the idea of people looking at it as negative. There was nothing but a raised fist in the air and a bowed head, acknowledging the American flag, not symbolizing a hatred for it." Close quote. Still, in a beat of the heart, both men returned home to a fury of contempt for the brave prophetic act of calling out the evil of racism, for the solemn vow they made to each other that if they should win, they would risk reputation and all of the advantages of celebrity. One might well wonder how today's athletes might so easily sacrifice lucrative endorsement deals and the benefits of fame. What I love about this story, however, more than anything, is the sobering courage each man showed in standing up to all the rebukes they suffered, the persecutions they endured. Neither of them, over all the ensuing years since that fateful day, has apologized for the pact that they made to put their futures in the balance against the monster of racism. That decision would shape the remainder of their lives, and they knew it from the moment they stood beside their shoes for the sake of racial comity and just accords. Tommy Smith and John Carlos ran into the history books, not because they won a dash, but because they sacrificed worldly glory for heaven's applause. In the many years since 1968, each man has made for himself the life circumstances have permitted him, but each man wears a smile that embodies the soul within at ease with itself when the world wanted to slay it. Golden medals have their charm. But like gold doors on an imposing, august temple, gold will fade and even melt away. A golden soul, brighter still, will shine through all the rancor, hatred, and hostility of this or any other day. I prefer to believe that Jesus points us that way when he says, "By your endurance, you will gain your souls." I have but one more thing to say in this regard. On your mark, Get ready. Set. Go! Oh, man.